Hello and welcome to our latest series of COVID support webinars. Our focus on the webinar here today is to provide you with details on how to undertake a workplace COVID-19 risk assessment, what your legal obligations are as a business, and how to document your findings. There are a series of other webinars to assist you during COVID-19, including self-isolation, outbreak management, and Plan A of the COVID-19 Autumn and Winter Response Plan, all which can be found via our Trade with Confidence page. If you wish to submit questions to us after viewing this or any of our other webinars, please contact us on our email address at covidbusinesssupport@wolverhampton.gov.uk, and an officer will make contact with you to offer you some support. Now, as you're all aware, Government have issued updated Working Safe guidance with a list of key priority actions. Undertaking a risk assessment remains one of the key priority actions to protect yourself, your staff, and your customers during COVID-19. Now, what is a risk assessment? Broadly speaking, a risk assessment is a careful examination of what, in your work, could cause harm to people and the ways that you can successfully manage these risks to avoid this harm from occurring. As the responsible person, you must conduct a risk assessment to understand how the virus could be transmitted in your premises. You should think about the way that you conduct your work, how your premises is used, and ways that you can protect yourself and members of the public by identifying factors that could result in transmission of the virus. By identifying these hazards, you can then identify sensible measures to control these risks. An example of a hazard would be touch points such as door handles and taps, card machines and cash. These touch points create a risk as the virus could be present on these surfaces. To avoid this risk, touch points should be wiped down frequently and contactless payments should be encouraged. Poorly ventilated space is also a workplace hazard, and to avoid this risk, premises should be well ventilated through natural or mechanical means. Staff should be trained on the findings of your risk assessments. They should be reviewed and amended as required. And where there are 5 or more employees, you are required to legally document the findings of your risk assessment. We have also included on our Trade with Confidence page a short video which will assist you on how to do a risk assessment. Now, what am I legally required to do? By law, every employer shall make a suitable and sufficient risk assessment of A, the risks to the health and safety of his employees to which they are exposed whilst they are at work, and B, the risks to the health and safety of persons not in his employment arising out of or in connection with the conduct by him of his undertaking. And by law, every self-employed person shall also make a suitable and sufficient risk assessment of A, the risks to his own health and safety to which he is exposed whilst he is at work, and B, the risks to the health and safety of persons not in his employment arising out of or in connection with the conduct by him of his undertaking. Under the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999, Section 3, the minimum that you must do is identify what could cause injury or illness in your business, decide how likely it is that someone could be harmed and how serious, take action to eliminate the hazard, or if this isn't possible, you must control the risk. Assessing risk is just one part of the overall process used to control risks in your workplace. For most small, low-risk businesses, the steps you need to take are straightforward. Many of you who are self-employed will ask if the law applies to you. The law will apply if you are an employer, if your work activity is specifically mentioned in the regulations, This includes work in construction, agriculture, railways, or work with gas, asbestos, or genetically modified organisms. And if your work activity poses a risk to the health and safety of anyone else. You have a duty to protect yourself and others from the risks your work creates, even if this is only for one small part of your overall work activity. However, in practical terms, if you are self-employed, you will not have to do anything where there is no risk to others. Now, can other people be affected by your work activities? If so, think about the services that you provide to them, in particular, your working environment. Do you work in a garage, workshop, or workplace where other people have access? Could you harm their health or safety? The equipment, materials, or substances that you use, could someone be burnt, scalded, crushed, trip over, or fall? Does your work activity create noise, dust, or fumes? Do you use any materials or substances that could injure someone if they come into contact with them? If you have answered yes to any of those above, then it is likely that your work activities may pose a risk to the health and safety of another person, and the law will apply to you. A few examples for assistance are as follows. I am a self-employed accountant and I am proposing to take on a work placement student. Will the law apply to me? Yes, you will have duties as an employer and will need to take steps to ensure the health, safety and welfare of work of your employees. I'm a self-employed hairdresser. Does the law apply to me? If you're using bleaching agents or similar chemicals, then yes, the law will apply to you. If you are simply washing and cutting hair, then health and safety law will no longer apply to you. I'm a self-employed tattooist. Yes, the law does apply to you, as you are carrying out an invasive procedure, injecting a product into the skin, and the law will apply to you. I work in an office at home. Does the law apply to me? It doesn't depend on whether you're at home. It is the work activity that matters that you must remember. So if, for example, you are working on a client's account, the law will no longer apply to you. If, however, you are writing a manual which someone will use to operate machinery, then the law will still apply to you. I'm a health and safety consultant and visit clients to provide advice. Does the law apply to me? Yes, it does. Your clients will act on your advice and this affects how other people will do their job. Now, how do I complete a risk assessment? Now, we appreciate that this is very difficult to understand and can be very complicated. So I will now go through a couple of examples for you here today, including one for office-based businesses and food preparation and service. I will then go through an example of a previous COVID-19 risk assessment template. These typical examples show how other businesses have managed risks. You can use them as a guide to think about some of the hazards in your business, the steps you need to take to manage these risks. Now, what is really important when undertaking your risk assessments is to remember to consider specific regulations which may be applicable to your business. For example, COSH regulations, gas safety, asbestos, public health regulations, and also approved codes of practice and/or guidelines for the nation that you are in. Now, as you can see from the screen, here is an example of a template for office-based businesses. Now, what you must remember on your first page is that this must be specific to your site. You can see here at the top that you will identify what the hazards are in the left-hand column, who might be harmed and how, what are you already doing to control these risks, what further action do you need to take to control the risks, who needs to carry out the action, and you will see the last two boxes on the right hand side are dates and when those have been completed. So some examples on the left hand side are slips and trips, manual handling of paper and office equipment. You can see clearly that which identifies which people are at risk and may be harmed, what the control measures are, and what further action needs to be taken. Now, as we move through, you will also see other hazards are display screen equipment that we're all aware of, working at height, workplace stress, electrical hazards, and asbestos in the office working environment. Now moving on to the next example, which will be for food and food service preparation. As you can see here, again, you have the top boxes identifying what the hazards are, who might be at risk, so your staff and members of the public, contractors that may visit, or any volunteers, what you are already doing to control the risks and what further action needs to be taken to control those risks and who that is carried out by and what the dates. So some examples of hazards in a food service preparation: slips and trips, of course, manual handling of heavy goods, such as when deliveries arrive, contact with steam, hot water, hot oil and surfaces. So for example, if somebody is boiling a vat full of meat or vegetables, and also hazards associated with knives. As we move on to the next page, you'll see the hazards of food handling and what controls are required there, contact with bleach and other chemicals, gas appliances. Now, as I mentioned to you a short while ago, making sure that you consider other regulations that are applicable and what the legal requirements are there for compliance, fire safety, any machinery. And what you will do is you will make sure that these risk assessments are signed off and reviewed, which we'll go on to shortly afterwards. Now, the COVID-19 risk assessment template that we are using here today is an old workplace COVID-19 risk assessment. So some of the hazards will no longer be applicable and will be best practice only. But as we move through this example, and please do feel free to contact us to request a copy of this template, and you can change that one as we send it through to you. That's not a problem at all. You can use this and adapt it for yourselves and your business type. So again, as you can see from the top column, hazards, who might be at risk, controls, further additional control measures, and who needs to carry out this action and dates recorded. So as you can see, a hazard which is really important to note is inadequate hand washing. Everybody can be affected by this, and what you can do to control the risk. You can see here, getting or spreading coronavirus in commonly used high traffic areas. So that could be example entry and exit points. So you might have a factory where you have 100 people working per shift, where they will all arrive for work at a certain time to start their shift. It's important to make sure you have control measures in place for those types of hazards that present from people being within congested areas. An example could be you could have staggered arrival times and exit times, or you could have a separate exit and a separate entrance point. You'll see lots of control measures that you can use as points for yourself and your business. So you see here, work through travel together. So that could be people that are travelling on business together. You could have a couple of people in a vehicle, making sure you remind them of the control measures. So putting windows down, wearing face coverings, that might be a control measure that you identify. Contaminated work surfaces and equipment and workstations, that's another hazard, and you can obviously see here the people that are affected and what control measures. So cleaning is imperative for that. Mental health is particularly important as well. We must not forget that hazard, making sure you have regular contact with your members of staff. Social distancing, as we know, is no longer within the guidance issued within the gov.uk website. It is, however, best practice to still do that in the workplace if you wish to at the moment. See here, it also identifies using DSE at home. So for those people that are still have the workforce at home, because you've seen that as a very good business model, making sure not to forget those individuals at home, making sure you carry out display screen equipment assessment with them and regularly review that. So ventilation is a key control measure. You know, you need to make sure that there is a supply of fresh air into the workplace. And there are guidance documents that are very useful with toolkits on our Trade with Confidence page that will help you to identify and implement key control measures for that particular hazard. So you must not also forget vulnerable workers, and that also includes those that are clinically extremely vulnerable. You might have pregnant ladies in the workplace, or new mothers, making sure that you do individual risk assessment with them and they are still regularly reviewed, and putting in control measures for them. For example, it might be that you if they're an office based in a clerical role, they could work from home. You'll find some information here on the use of personal protective equipment. There are some useful guidance documents on the HSE website for you around PPE, and PPE, if it is already used in the workplace for non-COVID-19 measures, it is important that you still comply with those requirements. And that's it for the COVID-19 risk assessment. As I mentioned, if you need any support or need to see a copy of that template, please do get in contact with us. So as I mentioned earlier, it is really important to remember to always talk to your employees and involve them in the process when considering your control measures. These particular individuals, so your employees, they might be able to provide you with valuable information on how to reduce the risks. So make sure that you involve them when you're undertaking your risk assessments in the workplace, not just for COVID-19. You should remember to put monitoring and supervision in place and to make sure the controls you have are working as you would expect them to do so. So how often do I need to review and update my risk assessment? So there is no legal requirement or no legal time frame, should I say, for when you should review your risk assessment. It is at your discretion to decide when a review is deemed necessary, but the risk assessment is a working document, and as your business experiences change, this information should be recorded and updated. As a guide, it is recommended that risk assessments be reviewed on an annual basis. Now, for your COVID-19 risk assessment, as regulations are constantly under review and changes are made, you should update your risk assessment in line with these changes. So, as well as your health and safety risk assessments, the law also says that every business must have a policy for managing health and safety. A health and safety policy sets out your general approach to health and safety. It explains how you, as an employer, will manage health and safety in your business. It should clearly say who does what, when and how. If you have 5 or more employees, you must write down your policy, just like your COVID-19 risk assessment. If you have fewer than 5 employees, you do not have to write anything down, but it is, however, useful. You must share this policy and any changes to it with your employees. Your policy should cover 3 areas. Part 1, a statement of intent. It should state your general policy on health and safety at work, including your commitment to managing health and safety and your aims. As the employer or most senior person in the company, you should sign it and review it regularly. Part 2 should be the responsibilities for health and safety, listing the names, positions and roles of the people in your business who have specific responsibility for health and safety. And then 3, arrangements for health and safety. You should give details of the practical arrangements you have in place, showing how you will achieve your health and safety policy aims. This could include, for example, doing a risk assessment, training employees, and using safety signs or equipment. To assist you in writing one, we will place a copy of an example template to assist you via our FAQ document. We've also included some useful contacts and guidance documents for you via our FAQ document, and please do make contact with us should you have any questions or concerns, and we'll be happy to help you. Our Trade with Confidence page holds a wealth of information as a go-to point. And finally, thank you for your time and for listening today.